I think the biggest challenge leaders face is they don't realize leadership is a job in itself. It's one of the things that I really work with my executives for, because yes, you can run a company and you can run it brilliantly and you can make a lot of money and you can have nice cars. You have two full-time jobs. You have running this company and you have leading people. And leading people takes its own skill set. It requires you to develop the person under you, not just to have them.
Hello. Welcome to another knowledge bomb episode of Lead to Greatness, where we believe in helping others reach their greatest potential and together change the world. Today on Lead to Greatness, we have Cynthia Corsetti. If this is your first time joining us, please consider subscribing and hit that notification bell and hit that like button. This will be greatly appreciated in helping getting out this content to great leaders and great individuals like yourself. Cynthia is a powerhouse executive coach and author of her upcoming book, Dark Drivers. She partners with organizations to identify top performers, cultivate the next generation of leaders, and fortify C-suite executives with a robust pipeline of upcoming leaders, ensuring organization success with more than 20 years of corporate leadership roles and over 11 years in executive coaching experience. Her book, Dark Driver, will be pre-launch until Monday, August 21st. During the podcast, she talked about some offers with the pre-launch, so you don't want to miss this opportunity to get connected. Please help me welcome Cynthia with Executive Mastery Coaching. Cedric Francis, and you're listening to Lead to Greatness.
I am Cynthia Corsetti, and I am an executive leadership coach. I am a speaker and author and specialized in succession planning, helping leaders build the next level. And I've been doing this for 13 years now, full time.
13 years. How did you get into the coaching aspect of it?
I was a human resources for a lot of my career, and I kept progressing up the leadership ladder, and I ended up in the C-suite. And the thing I liked most about everything that I did was coaching and developing the other leaders. So when I met my now husband about 14 years ago or so, he's a physician and he likes to travel. And all I did was work. Wow. So I made the conscious decision then to say, all right, I'm going to dedicate that and I want to have my own business. So I took all the things I really love to do and I created a business doing it.
Let's talk about real quick. We're going to talk about the business, but I want you to a topic that you're super passionate about right now. Let's talk about that and why.
I am super passionate right now about my upcoming book called Dark Drivers. And I'm super passionate about it because it's something that just had to come out of me at some point in time. It's dark drivers are these hidden memories, experiences, and traumas from our past that stay buried in our subconscious, and we're completely unaware of them. And yet they impact everything in our lives. They impact how we make decisions, how we choose careers, how we choose partners, why we leave relationships. So these dark drivers are pulling a lot of the strings. And once we identify what those are, we can't get rid of them because they're part of who we are, but we can work around them in a much better way. And I am really passionate about that because I've seen people get a grasp of them. It's amazing when they do.
This is pretty awesome because you said something, you say you can't get rid of them. And I think a lot of times we become frustrated in life because we're trying to remove something. We're trying to move a part of us, a part of our experience, a part of our upbringing, a part of who we are, trying to remove this thing. And we're trying to kill something that's not going to die. It's like trying to kill a part of yourself, but you're still alive. I want you to talk about that because you said that, and I think that's so important for us to even learn the aspect of like, this is who you are, learn how to live with it and not trying to kill it because you may be killing yourself.
Yeah. So if you can envision yourself like showing up in any situation, like I'm sitting here across from you right now, looking at you, and this is the version of me that you see, but there's also like all these other versions of me right here. And it's my choice Who's going to
Mm,
step up here and talk to you? I can look over to my right and maybe see this like weaker version of me who'd be like shy and wouldn't want to speak up on something like this.
mm,
And if I put that person in the seat right now, that part of me, this would be a total failure. But instead, I choose this other part of me, this other version. So
mm,
we have this opportunity all the time to choose which version shows up. I had a client who learned to do that in me. He was always being told he was obnoxious, super
mm.
smart, but people are like, I don't want to work with him. He's too obnoxious.
Yeah.
And it turned out that one of his dark drivers was that he was just the youngest of 7 siblings. So he had to be obnoxious or to be noticed in his family, right? So he
Yeah.
learned this behavior. And then he would get to the point where he'd be in a meeting, he'd hear this obnoxious person coming out of him again and gets, okay, that's the 7-year-old. The 7-year-old can take a break right now. I want the
Wow.
adult professional to come in. And that's how we learn to manage these pieces that live with us.
That is a knowledge bomb. That is really huge because I mean we go into life and we don't really think about these things. I want to hear your thought on it. A leader that's not authentic, a leader that is trying to show their strengths and the weak part of them, they don't want to deal with it. I want you to talk about that. I mean, how do you deal with individuals that may be insecure in the area but not vulnerable?
It comes down to helping that individual identify what their insecurity is. And often that's the hardest part for leaders is
Mm,
they feel that showing vulnerability is showing weakness.
mm,
And I've watched some really awkward moments with leaders trying to pretend to be authentic.
mm,
So I watched one woman that I worked with, and she sent this email out to her entire company talking about her divorce and how painful it was for her. And
mm.
her thinking was, all right, I'm going to show up as vulnerable because they think that I'm a hard butt, somebody that I'm not. So I'm going to show them that I'm vulnerable. So she sends this email and it backfired because then just people felt awkward around her and it wasn't really authentic and they
Yeah.
didn't see that. So with her, we had to peel back like, why do you feel that being the real you is bad? Like, why do you think that showing them that it's okay to make mistakes?
Yeah.
That's the kind of vulnerability your team needs to see.
Yeah.
But in her world, you can't get a B. You couldn't, her parents, her family, her upbringing, she was in a preppy private school. You were judged all the time on those things. So she learned to behave in that way. And
Mm,
that's once she identified that, she's more able to say, all right, so vulnerability as a leader is really just saying, I don't have all the answers. Together we can find them.
knowledge bomb. That is so powerful. It is so powerful, but it's so scary at the same time because those voices that whisper in our ear that tell us, let me speak for myself. The crazy thing about it is never the positive things. I'm never talking about my strengths. There's always those weaknesses. It's like, man, if somebody find out about this aspect of me, they're not going to listen to the podcast or they're not going to follow me anymore. And I found out that I was totally wrong. I was totally wrong. It allowed people to trust me more and it allowed people to open up and show who they are and their vulnerability. And it created this culture that was accidentally created. Turned out to be a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I'm glad it did happen because people do need to see that human connection from you.
Yeah.
And I think when those thoughts start coming into our head, and they will, like every
Yeah.
single day, no
All the
matter,
time.
you
Yeah.
go try that meditation, try to shut your brain, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I always like to say, like, if you can just imagine your thoughts on a conveyor belt. Do you
Mm.
remember that old Lucy episode where she's picking up the chocolate and it's coming faster than she can and she's shoving it in her mouth?
Right.
If you picture your thoughts kind of like that, you have a choice. You can either let it keep going on that conveyor belt because that thought's not going to serve me. And I know another one's going to come down just as fast. There's going to be another thought. So you can wait for the thoughts when you get into that mode. That's what I share with my clients. Like you can't control what's coming into your head,
Yeah.
but you can control if you choose to pick it up off that conveyor belt and focus on it and think about it. And I think what you did, if I'm hearing you correctly, is you kind of chose not to pick those negative thoughts up and think about them. And you just said, I'm just going to be me.
Yeah, absolutely. You're coaching senior executives. And I want to kind of, with this particular thought on the things that's going on through our head and really maintaining and moving and not allowing this to take over our minds, because no one knows. It's the saying I always say. I don't know where I got it from. I didn't make it up, but feel the fear and do it anyway. And I try to practice this as much as possible. And a lot of people, they looking at me and they see these things, right? They see me moving, but they don't see what was going on in my head in order for me to make that right decision. They just seen the right decision being made. And, even being able to share with some, not with everybody, but with that individual, say, it's okay, or I just went through this and I dealt with this, and sharing those things. What's your thought on it?
Well, I think that is how leaders show the most vulnerability. Like I said, it's not necessarily having to share your most intimate personal secrets with everyone, but sharing the fact that you've struggled and that it didn't come as easily as it might appear that it has come to you.
Yeah.
And I think that that's important.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about you was in HR and you got started, but I want to hear a little bit more about that journey of moving into your business of 12 years.
Interestingly enough, I began my HR career because if you read my book, you'll read that I was a very late bloomer in career. I got married very young, very young. I was like 19 when I got married. So I had children very young. So I didn't even have an undergrad degree for a while. And so I was just kind of like trying to get out in the work world. And I was hired executive assistant jobs. I was looking, I can be somebody's secretary. And I went into this company. I was looking for an executive assistant. And I sat down and he said, I don't think you're an executive assistant type. I can see you in HR. And he hired me like on the spot to be his director of HR. I was like, it was called Baptism by Fire.
Wow.
It was a tech company that went from, when I started, 49 employees to 3 years later, like 1,600 with acquisitions. And I fell in love with HR at that point. The first thing he asked me to do, we were doing an acquisition. He goes, I need you to get me a cost per person analysis. I had to go back and like look that up. Like, I didn't even know what that was. So, I mean, that's how I started in HR, but I went back and got my master's and things I needed to do. And I ended up in a more senior role.
And so where did things go from there?
I didn't stay in just HR. I did leadership. I ran a chamber of commerce. I was a president of a chamber of commerce for a while. And that helped me make a lot of connections, which we all need to do. And then I ended up in a company where I was the vice president, and I stayed there until I started the job. But I think the biggest thing I've learned along my journey is that we're not how we're perceived. So there was a 360 done and understand that, like, coming later to all this career stuff, I was really trying to be my best and never let them see me sweat kind of thing. So what I thought I was very inviting, and I thought, I have this open door policy. I'm HR. People will come and love me and talk to me. And then we did a 360. And I got this 360, which your listeners probably know, but they're like peer reviews. They're peer subordinates and 360 around you give their feedback. And I got mine back, and I was so excited to open this up and see how great I was. Oh my gosh. I looked at it and they said I was unapproachable.
Wow.
I was like, that floored me. So I immediately called my daughter, picked up the phone, and these people think I'm unapproachable. And she said, like, that surprises you?
Oh, wow.
And I said, wow, why do you say that? And she said, because you're really always like put together and, always in the perfect suit, and you're always doing that. And she said, they don't see you at all. And that was like an awakening for me, like, oh, okay. So then I kind of let loose. And it's my first vulnerability lesson. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. Just be you.
Oh, man, that is a knowledge bomb. This is really good. So you got this 360 feedback. And once you got the feedback, you call your daughter kind of confirmed that this is true. And then you begin to change and shift things. I want to kind of talk about that journey of the shift. You're shifting this paradigm in your mind, like, okay, I have to do something different. After making that decision of having your aha moment, What happened after that?
Well, I had to really focus on the fact that perception is reality.
Mhm.
And so, no matter how I know who I know that I am, if others don't perceive me that way, it's irrelevant. So
Mm.
I think that's a really key thing that I think a lot of leaders make a mistake on. And I just found out, fortunately, very early in my career that that was a mistake I was making. So I just had to learn to be more empathetic with people and really connect with people as people and not as, trying to be the HR person and, real strict. And it just didn't work for me. That's not who I was.
Let's talk about this with the executive mastery coaching. What are some common challenges or obstacles that see leaders face, and how do you approach helping them overcome those hurdles?
I think the biggest challenge leaders face is the fact that they don't realize leadership is a job in itself.
Mm.
And I think that's really key. And that's one of the things that I really work with my executives for, because yes, you can run a company and you can run it brilliantly and you can make a lot of money and you can have nice cars. But you also have you have two full-time jobs. You have running this company and you have leading people. And
Mm.
leading people takes its own skill set, its own ability to understand empathy.
Yeah.
It requires you to understand your own dark drivers and get them under control. It requires you to develop the person under you, not just to have them follow you, but to have them grow and
Mm.
become leaders. Because the biggest compliment to a leader is to be replaced by someone under them.
Knowledge bomb. This thought by itself, I was just talking to someone about this just this week. And it's so interesting. You just said to develop someone. And there's a lot of individuals, there's a lot of leaders with leadership that's scared. They hoard information and hoard their knowledge because it's like, I don't want to be replaced, because if I tell this person everything, if I give them everything, they're going to replace me. I want you to talk to that individual that feel that they may be replaced. I want you to speak to them and also share with them the benefits in doing that and how it can be a bigger blessing than a curse in their life.
Yeah, being able to be replaced is empowering,
Yeah.
because I have seen over 20 plus years that I've either been in leadership or have been coaching leaders, so many times when we'd have an executive vice president that we wanted to move up into an even higher role, or I would have a company saying, I want to take that person and make them the CEO of my company, but there's no
Mm.
one to replace them down here and I know they won't come. So when you do that, you block yourself. You're putting up this invisible roadblock to your
Yeah.
own growth
Mm.
because there's nobody to replace you. And it's really, people do that throughout organizations. So you have the C-suite trying to hold on to their position so they don't develop the next level. And then
Yeah.
that level is not developing the next level. And you know what happens? Every time there's an opening, they're going outside because I don't
Yeah.
have anybody to take this role. It's ludicrous. So I
Yeah.
really focus on organizational succession planning in teaching the leaders. Developing people and that type of leadership to replace you requires a specific set of skills, and that's what
Yeah.
the executive mastery is about. It's not just learning how to master your own emotions and reactions and all of those things, which is part of it, but it's also knowing exactly how to get this person to stretch, to get this person to be vulnerable, to get this person to do the work they need to do within so they can be a stronger leader. That takes work. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, that's why you're making the big bucks, because you're able to do both.
Mm. Another knowledge bomb. I want you to talk about the executive mastery coaching because you mentioned it. But I just want you to kind of share a little bit more to the listeners on today, because you have individuals that are entrepreneurs, you have senior leaders that are listening to the podcast right now and may have listened and said, you know what, I have issues in this area and I really like Cynthia and what she's saying, and I want to work with her. There's a lot of things going on in this world. There's a lot of coaching programs going on. What particular thing that separate what you are doing from the rest?
That's an interesting question. I believe that what really does set me apart from other coaches is I partner with my clients. I don't just say, oh, we have a call every Tuesday at 3 o'clock, or, I partner. You have Marco Polo. When I get off this call, you will see like 5 Marco Polos on here from clients. Something happens in your day. You come out of a meeting and you just like, got to get this out of your head. It's like, oh, this just happened in this meeting. I have one client who's a surgeon, and she came out of a surgery. She had her mask on and her gloves on, and she has her assistant holding the phone because, like, hey, I just had this interaction. I wanted to run this by you to see if I could have handled it differently.
Amazing.
And that's the kind of partnership you need. I have clients who've been with me for 8 years and more. Just because that it's not because someone said to me, well, does that mean they're not getting what they need? I said, no, it means because they keep growing. And every time they grow, they want that next step and that level.
What amazing relationship. Yeah. That speaks a lot of volume, having clients that's been with you over 5+ years. That's amazing. And that speaks volume in who you are as an individual, and creating this win-win in the relationship. So I definitely love that. Looking over your life, over whether it's your career, leadership, it can be work-life balance, or whatever the case may be. I'm going to let you answer this question however, whatever you want to focus on. But I want to talk about, what is the most important lesson you've learned so far?
That ended up being my book. The most important lesson that I've learned is that your past does not have to define your future. And who you think you are and what you think are your weaknesses, those are only stories you're telling yourself. And unfortunately, I didn't learn those. And, it took me years and years and years to figure that out. But it's just true. When I grew up, I was told very young that my job was to get married and have a man to take care of you. And it took a long time to get that programming out of my brain that, maybe that's not true. Yeah. And if I learned that much sooner, things would be very different right now.
Amazing. Who is this book for?
That's an interesting question, because it's a cross-genre book. So it is a personal development book. So anyone who's into like Brene Brown and those kinds of personal development books will find resonance with this book. But I also say that this is the book that if you read things like Start With Why and Lean In and Good to Great, I'm going to tell you, don't read any of them until you read this first. Because for leaders, until you figure out yourself, you're not going to get as much value out of all the other books. Because they're great books and great topics, and Start With Why. But you can't start with why until you understand what's driving you.
Knowledge. Bomb. This is so great. I definitely want to get my hands on the book, and I know there's listeners right now want to get their hands on this book. How can someone get their hands on this book today?
So where the book is in process, the manuscript is complete, and I am working with my publisher on final revisions. So the book will be actually released in January.
Okay.
However, right now, there is a 30-day window that expires August 21st, and you can pre-order a copy. And by pre-ordering, there's some benefits that you get out of pre-ordering. Okay. You can buy I have some special workbooks that'll be only available to pre-order people that can work through their dark drivers and maybe get on a group coaching call with me to work through them. People who pre-order will be able to help me choose the cover. I don't have a subtitle yet for the book. So amazing. I'll be asking the pre-order people to help me choose those kinds of things. So they'll actually be part of the journey and mentioned in the acknowledgments and everything as well. So this is a really critical time, because if you sell enough copies during the pre-sale, when it hits the market in January, it's going to hit higher on the ratings, and then more people get helped.
Wow. So listen, Lead to Greatness. This podcast is released on today, on August 7th. So August 7th, And so you have 2 weeks to get in the pre-order, to get in the tribe, to get in this community. Execute right now. Make that decision right now to get connected to everything that Cynthia and her team is doing right now with this amazing book. 14 days remaining. So August 21st is the last day. And if you listen to this after August 21st, January, get the book. Get the book in January. All right. So we definitely excited about that, rallying with you, with what you're doing for the world. So thank you for that. What are some practical leadership growth tips, tools, advice that you can share with the Lead to Greatness community to help us reach our greatest potential?
Don't try to be perfect. The answers, you don't have to have all the answers. You just have to have a team that trusts you enough to share their information. That's, I think, one of the key things. Also, just remember that leadership is another job and don't take it for granted. People get in that role and they have that title and think, yes, I'm a leader. Like, if you're not focusing every day on what that means and how am I communicating and what is the perception people have of me and how am I developing other people and what gifts am I bringing to these people and to the organization, if you're not thinking of that every single day, you're going to be an average leader. And in order to be an excellent leader who's going to really excel, you've got to recognize you have 2 jobs.
That is a knowledge bomb to go. Thank you. This is amazing. Thank you for dropping so many knowledge bombs on us and helping us in our lives, and just different tips, tools, and all these gems that you have shared with us today to make us better, to help us reach our greatest potential, and together we change the world. If someone wants to connect with you and what you're doing, where should they go?
They can go to the link for the book for the pre-launch. My website is cynthiacorsetti.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn is my sandbox. That's where I am the most active. I love LinkedIn because my marketing people make me. I also have a presence on Instagram and Facebook, but I'm really most comfortable on LinkedIn. So if you're out there and you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I would just love to have you as part of my community on LinkedIn.
On behalf of the Lead to Greatness community, we want to thank you so very much for taking time out of your busy schedule and adding value to us all.
I thank you so much for having me. It just touches me and it means so much to me to be here. So thank you for this honor.
So we want to thank you for joining us today on the Lead to Greatness podcast. And if this is your first time, don't forget to subscribe. Hit that like button, hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of these amazing episodes. And if you're on iTunes, go ahead and rate the podcast and leave a review. That helps get the word out to great leaders and entrepreneurs like yourself. So we want to thank you for joining us today. So remember, if you help others reach their greatest potential, together we can change the world. Peace.